The numbers are not good in Chicago. Last weekend, 21 people were shot, 5 of them fatally. Police Superintendent Gary McCarthy says those shootings are only happening in 20 high-crime areas of the city. Today, we're talking about why.
Some experts say the city's homicide rate would be significantly lower if more teens carried a work ID instead of packing heat. Would that really make a difference? We'll ask our experts what they think and how they assess the state of Black Chicago.
And last week, First Lady Michelle Obama came home to praise the work of Chicago's First Lady. We'll tell you about a program aimed at getting at-risk teenagers off the streets and into a corporate office. This is Fox 32 Sunday. Good morning, everybody, and thank you so much for joining us, and welcome to the program. I'm Darlene Hill.
I'm political editor Mike Flannery. Today we're going to do something a bit different.
You just heard the number of people shot and killed in Chicago last weekend. This summer, those numbers don't seem to vary from one weekend to another, even after two prominent leaders in the Black community take to the streets for anti-violence rallies.
And on Friday, President Obama talked about race relations in America and the Trayvon Martin case.
When Trayvon Martin was first shot, I said that this could have been my son. Another way of saying that is Trayvon Martin could have been me 35 years ago. And when you think about why, in the African American community at least, there's a lot of pain around what happened here, I think it's important to recognize that the African American community is looking at this issue through a set of experiences and a history that doesn't go away.
Barack Obama doing something he rarely does, talking about race relations, and that is indeed one of our topics this morning, as well as the state of Black Chicago. We're joined by Larry Rogers Jr., George Smith, a PhD psychotherapist here in Chicago, and Anta Njai, a high school junior who was in the park the day her friend Hadia Pendleton was killed, and this is her second time. Thank you all so much for coming, especially you.
Thank you for being with us. Let's talk about your reaction to the president's comments today on race. It's forcing the nation. What happened last week, that verdict that came in the Trayvon Martin case, is forcing the nation, would you say, to have a conversation about race, a topic they want to stay away from?
I would. I think race is a part of our society. It's a part of where we are today, and I'm glad to see him address it directly. I think he's spot on when he says African Americans who view that verdict, or we view that verdict from a sense of history, and it means a lot more to see a child of ours gunned down, obviously unarmed, and to see the shooter walk away.
Anta, you're 16 years old. What went through you? What was your reaction and your friends when that verdict came out?
When the verdict came out, it was kind of like a shockwave, the same as when Hadia was shot, because when Trayvon was shot, it could have been us. It could have been me. It could have been any of my peers. And we responded just as if we were the ones that got shot, or if it was one of our family members or friends. We, on Instagram, we blocked out our profile picture in the name of Trayvon. It was like
and it was just a black screen.
It was just a black screen, because it was just like, we're invisible. It seems as if we're treated to be invisible. So why not pretend to be invisible? And then on Twitter, it was a social firestorm. Everybody was tweeting, "This is ridiculous," and I applaud President Obama for bringing up this race topic, because personally, this conversation is long overdue, and it needs to be discussed, considering that we live in a society in which everything is based upon race.
Everything?
Everything.
Now, obviously, from my perspective, and maybe as someone who's practiced in Chicago for 35 years, Dr. Smith, you could tell us about this. It doesn't seem to me like everything is based on race. I acknowledge it certainly is an undertone and an overtone in many situations. Where does that feeling come from?
I think lack of frustration, just a lot of very frustrated about just things that's happened around us. A lot of anger, a lot of disappointment, lack of opportunities, a lot of racial overtones, a lot of frustration that's been developed over the years. And then when you sit around older people and they talk about some of the history, I mean, the first thing that came to my mind was in 1955 when I was sitting around the TV in this Emmett Till situation.
Yes, yeah.
It just surfaced. And the pain that I felt, along with my parents. It
Now, on the
was-
other hand, I think even some African American commentators who watched the trial of George Zimmerman said that there may well have been reasonable doubt. They understand why the jury in that case,
With what they were presented, the evidence they had.
that was the case. They were not asked, that jury was not judging 400 years of American race relations. They were judging whether that was beyond reasonable doubt that this guy, George Zimmerman, was guilty or not. And there seemed to be reasonable doubt. You're a lawyer, Larry.
And we were talking about how
Sure. I mean,
picking a jury is picking jurors is very difficult, and a lot of African Americans complain that there was not one of us on that jury.
Sure. I think as much as it's important that judges make sure that there's a diverse jury so that you have a perspective from all sides of the community evaluating a case, it's important that citizens take it upon themselves to serve as jurors and not run away. The litigants need you to sit in judgment of the case. Otherwise, it compromises the end result or the verdict.
And Dr. Smith said something interesting about that, is that it's about being there in the pool, being registered voters to be a part of the pool. That's what you were
one
talking
of the
about.
things that we don't teach civics in the high schools in many cases, and as a result of that, young people are not aware of the fact that our pool of jurors come from our registered voters. And getting young people to vote, that's where your peers are going to come from. If they're out there registering to vote and they're called in, then they can actually go through that process.
I think now they've actually expanded it, haven't they? Recently expanded it to include driver's licenses.
Driver's
right?
licenses,
Right.
correct.
So,
correct.
but
I would just add to that I think it's the role of the judiciary who sits and watches jury selection to make sure that a diverse and fair representation of the community sits in judgment of the case. There are certain laws in place to prevent you from excusing someone because they're African American, but I think the law needs to go further than that to make sure that there are African Americans, Hispanics, as well as whites on a jury to sit in judgment of the case.
Let's talk a little bit about what's going on here in Chicago. I had heard a number the other day. One of the elected officials is talking about the crime here in Chicago, saying that for every one police officer out there on the streets, there are 12 gangbangers. Now I'm hearing from FOP here in Chicago that there are 12,000 sworn police officers out on the streets, but there are 100,000 gangbangers out there. The gangbangers have a lot to do with the violence out there. Anta, let's talk a little bit about what you see in high school and out on the streets.
Well, considering that I am a teenager, I see a lot more than you all would when it comes to the child spectrum on this topic. I have a lot of friends in my high school that are in gangs, but when it comes to gangs, the gang doesn't define them, because I know who they are outside of the gang, like through schoolwork and through their grades and things that they're able to bring to the table. When it comes to the gangs contributing to the violence, it's a sad thing, and you can only try to talk them out of being a part of a gang for so long, but they make the decisions themselves to be in it. And they have many different reasons, some of them being that they don't have guidance. I have a lot of friends that are in gangs and they have the same common characteristic. They don't have a father in their life. And the reason why they are in gangs is because they're trying to get that much needed and much wanted attention from an older male figure. So that's...
I got to cut you off right there. We got to continue this conversation, so we're going to take a break. So still ahead this morning on Fox 32 Sunday, we are going to continue our conversation about the state of Black Chicago.
So what can be done to stop the shootings? More police, the National Guard, jobs? What our panelists have to say when we come back.
And State Representative Monique Davis says it's not just the gangbangers doing the shooting. Are Chicago police officers intentionally killing young African-American men? Wait till you hear what she told a Detroit radio station.
And in our reporters' notebooks, two first ladies in the same room, what they said to each other, and why all of these teenagers got to listen and ask questions. This is Fox 32 Sunday.